Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
It's our art unit. And I know a lot of you out there are really into the arts. We're going to be going to Japan today, at least for a little while, and talk about one traditional art that they are famous for, and it's called Hotiko. It's a traditional paper craft.
Right, and I think this is pretty close to the Western paper mache, but of course, like a lot of things in Japan, it's probably much more complicated than that. Of course, when I was a kid, we did paper mache. You take newspaper and wad it up into balls, and then you cover it with sticky tape, and then you take little strips of paper that have been dipped in glue and water, and you apply those strips of paper onto the object and wait for them to dry, and then you paint it. So it's kind of similar, but again, this is a traditional paper craft of Japan, and that's what we're talking about today. So let's not delay any further. Let's listen to our article read now from top to bottom. Japan has a rich culture of art. One particularly distinctive craft is Hotiko, which uses paper and glue to make figures. This technique originally came from China, but gained popularity in Japan during the Edo period, 1603 to 1867. It involves layering paper carefully by hand to make toys and lucky charms. One popular Hotiko figure is the tiger. It was put outside of homes when the son was sent to war. Hotiko tigers were talismans that people believed would help the son to return home safely, just like a tiger always returns to its den after a hunt. The process of making Hotiko is time-consuming and labor-intensive. The initial step involves wetting thin pieces of paper and gluing them onto a wooden mold. This step is repeated to reinforce the item. Once the layers are all dry, a hole is cut in the paper to remove the mold. Then a layer of powder made from crushed shells is mixed with glue and put on the item. Finally, it is painted with the desired design. Hotiko fell out of popularity during World War II. However, a number of artists around Japan are trying to revive the Hotiko tradition. One such artist is Hashimoto Shoichi, who is based in the Fukushima prefecture. This area was hit by an earthquake and tsunami on March 11, 2011. Hashimoto wanted to do something to help with the reconstruction effort. He crafted a gigantic Daruma doll, which according to popular belief protects from disaster. The Daruma had the Japanese word for reconstruction on its belly, and people were encouraged to write messages on it. The artist also facilitates workshops to help keep the tradition of Hotiko alive. He hopes to motivate people to learn about Hotiko and bring the art to the next generation. Hashimoto believes the possibilities for Hotiko are infinite.
Okay, guys, let's get started. This is Hotiko, and it's a traditional paper craft of Japan. You'll often see a phrase we use in English to describe lots of arts that we make with our hands in particular. We call them arts and crafts. When we were in school, we always had art class, too. That was part of school. We really enjoyed that part. I didn't because I already knew or understood as a young elementary school student that I had zero talent and that I wasn't any good at this stuff. So I was always kind of embarrassed in art class. But arts and crafts are things that are made by skilled artisans or artists, and they use different types of materials. It could be some sort of yarn or thread or paper or canvas. Maybe they're painting. Here, we're going to be talking about something that's very close to what we call paper mache in America. But the way the Japanese do it, of course, is very, very Japanese.
Indeed, and it's highly skilled, and of course you can probably sell these works for lots of money. But again, for reference, it is similar to our paper mache. And of course, again, it's called Hotiko, which I believe in kanji is jiangzi. You may have heard of that. And again, it uses paper and glue to make figures or shapes or whatever. And this technique originally came from China. Like a lot of things in Japan, they came from Tang Dynasty China. katakana, but it gained popularity in Japan during the Edo period, which lasted from 1603 to 1867. Now, popularity refers to the degree to which something is popular. So it became popular in Japan, or it gained popularity in Japan during a certain historical period in Japan called the Edo period, which again lasted from 1603 to 1867.
Now, how does it work? Well, it involves layering paper. If you layer something, you put one layer on top of another. So usually they are very thin layers that you're putting on. If you're making a cake, sometimes people will put several layers of icing on something, which makes it really, really sweet. This involves little thin pieces of paper being carefully placed by hand, one after another. They use this layering process to make toys and lucky charms. A lucky charm is something you keep with you to bring you good luck. And who doesn't need a little good luck?
Indeed, and of course toys you can play with, but lucky charms, of course, are things that'll probably bring you good luck in your home. If you put it on the desk of your business or something like that, it will attract business, like those cats with the waving paw, that's kind of a lucky charm. And the Darumo, which we'll get to later, is also similar. And one popular Hotiko figure is the tiger. It was put outside of homes when the son was sent to war. So that's one particular figure that you'll see, a Hotiko figure in the shape of a tiger. And the reason they have that is because they put it outside of homes when the son was sent to war to fight against the Americans at Pearl Harbor or places like that. And Hotiko tigers were talismans that people believed would help the son to return home safely, just like a tiger always returns to its den after a hunt. Now, we've got a talisman here. You can say talisman or talisman. It's just kind of a lucky charm. It can be an object that you have that will bring you good luck, or it will give you magical powers.
Right. And usually a talisman would include something like a ring or a stone, and they've inscribed or written something on it. Here it's a little different. It looks like a tiger. Tom and I were looking at photos of some Hotiko before we started, and a couple of the little tigers look like kitty cats to me, but they're pretty cute. It depends on the artist and what it looks like. So this Hotiko figure of the tiger was meant to try to keep that son going off to war safe from being harmed or killed so that he would one day return home safely. We hope that for everybody who has to go to war. So it was kind of just like a tiger who returns to his home. We're calling his home a den after going on a hunt. And sometimes tigers can be hurt while they're hunting for food, even though they're very strong animals and they typically win any fight that they have. They can be injured or harmed as they're hunting for food. So a den is often just something we refer to when we're talking about a wild animal's lair or where they live, their habitation.
Yeah, their house, basically, whatever that entails. And, of course, they have the tiger outside the house. So the son will return home safely, just like a tiger will return back to the den. A den is also kind of a room in a house where you can go study or do something in private. But they're not so common. We did not have a den in my house when I was growing up. We did have a living room or something like that. But
it can be called a study, which some people call it a study. Usually it's where you could study as a kid, but my dad would often meet with clients after work there. But it's also called a den, you're right.
Indeed. Now, here in the next paragraph, it says, the process of making Hotiko is time-consuming and labor-intensive. So, yes, indeed, it does involve a lot of steps. It's different from origami, I suppose. Origami, yes, indeed, can be quite time-consuming and labor-intensive. But this one involves other materials besides a piece of paper. In this case, you need, what did you need here? You need to have paper and glue. And later on, we're going to find out you need some crushed shells. And you're going to need some powder as well. So again, it's more complicated. It's very time-consuming. So yes, indeed, you're going to need to spend many hours on these items. And of course, you're going to have to work really hard. That's what labor-intensive means. That means you need to have a lot of people working on it at the same time, especially if it's in a factory that produces certain products. But here, the labor would be your labor.
Right. And it takes a lot of time-consuming. You can describe a lot of things as being time-consuming. Some things are worth the time you put into them, and they're worth the labor that you do, extend to them. But I'm sure it's quite lovely, but it's not easy. That's what they're trying to warn you of. So the initial step in the whole process is wetting or adding water or something liquid to thin pieces of paper and then gluing those thin pieces of paper onto a wooden mold. Initial here just means something that happens at the very beginning. So it's the first step in the whole process. So you could say the first step or the initial step. It's the same thing. Now, a mold is a shape of something. We use molds when we cook. You might have a cake that you're baking in the shape of a dinosaur. You've got a dinosaur mold. Here, this is a wooden mold. We know what it's made of, and that's wood. But it gives whatever you're putting on top of it a shape.
Indeed, of course, if you're working with steel and you want to make certain shapes, you can use a mold. You pour liquid steel or molten steel into the mold, and then it takes the shape of the object you want after it cools down. This is kind of opposite here because you're making the shape from the outside of the mold, but it's the same process here. And this step is repeated. It's done again and again to reinforce the item. So again, you need to put layer upon layer on this thing of paper and glue in order to make it nice and strong. It will reinforce the item. To reinforce something just means to make it stronger. For example, I think many years ago when they were building the MRT, the Brown Line, some of the pylons had cracks in them or something like that. So if you look at them, they've got these metal bars around them. They're there to reinforce the pylons to make them stronger.
Well, we're glad they did that. Right now, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher for a bit, and then we'll be back to continue.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们今天要带大家来看一篇有关于 Hotiko 日本章子这种传统手工艺的一个文章。不过我们设计成篇章结构，所以我们会特别针对文章当中的连贯性，或者是上下文当中要怎么样来选正确答案，做一些解释哦。我们如果要做篇章结构的话，其实可以稍微浏览一下下面的选项。这个选项当中啊，其实就会隐含着告诉你可能会出现在文章的哪一个部分。例如 A 选项的意思是制作章子的过程耗时又费工，可是在 A 选项里面的 The process 这个过程 of making Hotiko is time-consuming and labor-intensive 其实就是告诉我们它可能是某一个段落的开头，或者是某一个段落的总结。如果是开头的话，就表示 A 选项之后可能会有一步一步的步骤，然后甚至是耗了多少时间，也就是针对句子的内容在做细部的展开。好，这是我们对 A 的答案的一个解释。那么 B 选项呢，看到的是 however 然而，也就是句子已经先画风一转，然而有一些艺术家，在日本的艺术家就试着想要让 Hotiko 这个 tradition 能够复活起来，能够活过来。好，先看一下有一个关键字，就是在倒数第4个 revive 这个字中间的 viv 这个字根其实就是 live 就是活的意思，前面的 re 指的是 again 就表示活过来。那画风一转，但是有些人想要让它活过来哟，也就是 B 选项的前面应该提到章子这个工艺好像已经式微了，已经死亡了。C 选项看到一个代名词，代名词一定是指涉前面提过的 什么样的东西，这个东西被放在家门外，然后呢，当儿子出去打仗的时候，所以上下文应该会提到儿子出去打仗，然后什么东西要挂在门外之类的，我们猜应该是章子这种东西。再来最后的 D 选项，我们看到这个艺术家，我们要注意哦 ，the 这个定冠词就是限定，就表示上文有提到这个艺术家啊，也 also 也要圈起来，因为表示他除了现在 D 选项的这一些举办工作坊的事情之外，他还做了别的事哦，也举办工作坊，所以冠词的 the 跟也都很重要。那言下之意，应该 B 跟 D 的选项大概会是同一组的，应该是章子啊，他可能慢慢的式微，但是有一些艺术家想要复活这样子的传统，甚至是有艺术家做了哪些具体的事情，我们在浏览之后就赶快来看一下咯。在第一段，我们因为一开始一定会提到介绍一下所谓的章子这样子的独特的工艺，当然一开始是来自于中国，不过呢，主要就是用来制作一些玩具啊，或者是 lucky charms 幸运符。接下来就看到我们第一题咯，第一题的前后啊，特别讲说其中一个很受欢迎的 figure 就是 the tiger 老虎。那我们在做篇章结构的时候，上下文一定要看清楚，所以下一句话一定要看，也就是第一段的第7句的地方。第7句他说啊，大家相信啊，章子就是可以帮助儿子回家的一个护身符，所以我们有看到 the sun 在第7句呼应了第一格，而 C 选项的这个 it 当然指的就是这种 the tiger 老虎这个东西，所以第一格应该是选 C最为适当。那再来第二格呢，在段落的一开始不知道讲了什么东西，可是你稍微浏览一下，发现第二段好像都是在讲一些制作的过程。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. It's our art unit, and we're learning about a traditional paper craft from Japan called Hotiko. We know that it originally came from China, but it really became popular in Japan during their Edo period. What does it involve? Well, you're going to layer paper carefully by hand, and hopefully, at the end of the process, you're going to come out with some cute toy or maybe a lucky charm that will bring you luck into your life.When we left you, we were talking about the whole process being very time-consuming and labor-intensive. It's a lot of work and a lot of time. So you want to think about those things before you start. The first step or the initial step is getting wet, thin pieces of paper and then gluing them onto some wooden mold in whatever shape you're trying to come out with. So this step is repeated. So you keep doing this one step to reinforce the item. To reinforce, as Tom had explained, just means you're going to strengthen something, make it so it's stronger, you support it more.Right,
and of course, again, you're putting layer upon layer of these strips of paper and glue onto this mold, and once the layers are all dry, a hole is cut in the paper to remove the mold. Now, that sounds kind of interesting. I don't know how big that hole is going to be, but you'll cut a hole in the final figure in order to take out the mold, which again is made from wood. Then a layer of powder made from crushed shells is mixed with glue.And put on the item. I guess that will also reinforce the item, but it will also make it look nice and pretty. And then finally, it is painted with the desired design. So again, if it's going to be a tiger, well, you need to put the tiger stripes on it and the orange color and the white and the black. And of course, the eyes and the ears. You'll paint that all on there for the design that you desire or for the design that you want.Wow.
So if you don't like a typical tiger design or the colors of a tiger, you can paint your tiger whatever color you want. So it's up to you. Moving on to the next paragraph, it said Hotiko fell out of popularity. If something falls out of popularity, it's no longer popular. But as you know, and if you follow fashion, you know that some old styles that were popular long ago have become popular once again. That's because they've been revived. To revive something is to bring back something that once was popular or maybe a trend that people were following, and then people got tired or bored of it, and then it was revived. So now it says a number of artists or many artists around Japan, they're trying to bring back this tradition of Hotiko.
Yep, a number of artists, a certain amount of artists, many artists, you could also say, they want to revive this tradition, to bring it back to life. And one such artist is Hashimoto Shoichi, who is based in the Fukushima prefecture. Of course, in Japan, their xian, as you call them here in Taiwan, are prefectures, and they've got all sorts of them all over the place. This one is Fukushima, which I believe is on Honshu Island, if I'm not mistaken. And this area was hit by an earthquake and tsunami on March 11th, 2011. You may have been young enough or old enough to remember when that happened. I certainly remember when that happened. They had some pretty good videos coming out of there when the tsunamis came in and flooded all these coastal towns.
It's crazy.
Or when the earthquake was shaking the buildings and things like that. It was quite covered very well by the news media at the time. And yes, indeed, this is a guy from Fukushima, and I guess he was inspired by that disaster to try to bring this traditional art form back again.
Now, you guys all know what earthquakes are. I don't think we've had a tsunami in Taiwan yet, but it's something that is possible. It's not impossible for us to experience a tsunami. That's when a big sea wave that is caused by an earthquake becomes so big that it goes to shore and can actually cover a lot of land and can kill a lot of people that way. I know that Thailand had a huge tsunami and they lost a lot of people that way. So our artist Hashimoto, he wanted to do something to help with the reconstruction effort. Reconstruction refers to rebuilding something after it's been destroyed or damaged. And you know that Fukushima needed a lot of help after that horrible earthquake and tsunami.
Right, so we're talking about the reconstruction effort, and he crafted, or he made, a gigantic Daruma doll, which according to popular belief protects from disaster. So you've probably seen this, and you've probably seen them in Taiwan even. It's kind of red. It's like a big head, and it's got black eyes. Although the second eye is not painted in, you only do that when your project is finished, when you've achieved success. And this was a gigantic Daruma. And if something's gigantic, well, it is as big as a giant. It's huge. It's big. You probably need to go onto Google search to find out exactly what it looked like. Daruma, I hope I said that right, in kanji, I believe, is damo. And that's, again, a kind of doll or figure that is traditional there in Japan. And again, according to popular belief, this is what people believe in Japan, that Daruma will protect you from disaster. Disaster, of course, is something terrible that happens, and you don't want such a disaster to happen because it will cause lots of damage, and later on you'll need to go through reconstruction.
Wow, I just looked up a picture. It's kind of cute. It's a hollow, round doll. And yeah, it's supposed to bring protection from disaster. We need those here in Taiwan. We have a lot of natural disasters. The Daruma had the Japanese word for reconstruction on its belly. Your belly is just your tummy, where your stomach is. A lot of people like to use belly. Oh, my belly hurts, or wow, my belly's so fat. I ate so much. And people were encouraged to write messages on it. So they could even write their own personal messages on the belly of these Daruma dolls. Now, the artist also has some workshops that you can attend. If you facilitate something, you just are involved in the process. You make that process go more smoothly. Sometimes you'll have a meeting and you'll have a facilitator there who will help maybe both sides negotiate something or discuss something so they have better communication. Here, he's facilitating workshops. So he's holding these workshops to help keep the tradition of Hotiko alive. I'm sure he's a great teacher.
I'm sure he is. And again, to facilitate just means to make something easier. And so he's got these workshops that people can attend, they can sign up for, and learn how to make those Hotiko figures. And I'm sure it's very rewarding. He hopes to motivate people to learn about Hotiko and bring the art to the next generation. So here we've got the verb to motivate, which means to get people to do something. For example, if your children are not doing homework like they should, you might motivate them by offering them to take them out for dinner at their favorite restaurant after they get an A on the test or something like that. That might motivate them. And the noun form is motivation. You need some motivation to be successful in life sometimes.
That's nice motivation. That's positive motivation instead of negative motivation, which means I'm going to punish you if you don't get good grades. I like the positive motivation there. So he hopes to motivate people or encourage them to learn about Hotiko and bring the art to the next generation. Hashimoto believes the possibilities for Hotiko are infinite. Infinite just means goes on forever and ever and ever. So there are a lot of chances for people to not only learn this art, but to benefit from it because I know if you believe in something hard enough, it usually works. So maybe it will continue to protect people from disaster in the future if they have a daruma doll in particular.
Now, I'm inspired myself, although I don't think we have any workspaces at home for me to try this, but I guess maybe I'll watch YouTube videos of people doing it while I can't. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. It's time now to turn things over to our Chinese teacher.
所以从第二句开始的 the initial step 一开始的第一步，第三句的 this step 这个步骤，第四句 once the layers 当每一层都干的时候，第五句 then 然后要做什么什么，第六句的 finally 到最后如何如何，它就是在描述一个过程。所以在第二段从第二句开始一直到全部的段落结尾的内容都呼应了答案 A 的 the process， 而且的确内容就提到非常的 time consuming labor intensive， 是非常耗时而且费工的，所以第二题答案选 A 是最适当。好，接下来我们就剩下2个选项就比较好选咯。在第3段的地方，我们看到张子其实后来就在第2次世界大战之后就退了流行，然后在第3格不晓得填了什么之后，后面看到 one such artist， 其中有一个这样的艺术家，然后就出现了具体的名字咯。那3跟4都是要提到日本的艺术家很想要恢复张子这种艺术这种工艺的状况，所以第3格呢，先提到的是一个 however， 然而虽然已经式微，但然而有一些艺术家想要恢复张子的工艺，而其中一个就是 Hashimoto 这位先生。然后他做了什么呢？我们看到从第3句啊、第4句这边都有描述到，这个桥本章一这位艺术家是住在这个福岛，然后当时因为有这个311的大地震，然后他就做了一些事，包括制作巨大的达摩娃娃然后呢甚至还举办了工作坊。所以我们来到第4题的时候，的确在第一选项的The artist 这一位艺术家到底是谁？就是提到的具体的说的这一位桥本章一这位艺术家，他也举办工作坊，而且希望 motivate people 能够让大家能够注意到Hotiko张子这样的工艺，希望能够传下去。所以希望今天的篇章结构能够为大家带来更多所谓篇章的概念。我是安娜，我们下次见。
That's it for today. Thank you for joining us. And hey, maybe you are inspired to give a shot at Hotiko yourself. I bet you'll come up with something really cool. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.